If I need to speak a little bit on the topic of hell, all I can, I just want to put it in its context. Because I think for many Christians growing up in the era that we've grown up in, heaven and hell was two parts of the same coin. That's what the whole gospel was founded upon. It's 50% of one and 50% of the other. If you can't draw them with the promise of heaven, you scare them with the thought of hell. But somehow we need to bring them to a conviction. If I look at, let's take the most prolific writer in the New Testament, Paul, who writes 2/3 of the New Testament. In all his writing, if hell was such an important topic, I would hope that at least one of the letters would be about the subject. Or maybe at least one chapter in one of the letters. Or maybe one paragraph, please, a paragraph. But Paul, in everything he writes, mentions hell once. And that is to say, oh hell, where is your victory? Oh death, where is your sting? And that is everything he has to say on that subject. And so the next argument is, but Jesus mentioned it a lot. Well, let's put that into context as well. Jesus spoke to a lot of different audiences. And we often take whatever he said to any audience as equally relevant to everybody. But the best way to understand anything that somebody had to say is to look at the context in which they said it, who did they speak to, and what did they try and communicate. Now, if Jesus took the popular fundamentalist opinion of hell, he should have preached on hell to the prostitutes, the tax collectors, and the sinners. But whenever he spoke to the prostitutes, tax collectors, and sinners, he spoke to them about the goodness of God, about the grace of God, about the kingdom that is more inclusive than what they've ever imagined. And so the only audience that he ever spoke to concerning hell is this audience called the religious leaders, who condemned everyone else to that place, and to these people who are absolutely sure that we are the chosen insiders heading for eternal bliss, and that gives us a right to exclude this low life to a place of torment. To them he speaks about the fact that they are in the very place that they want to condemn others to. So the very concept of hell as taught by Jesus was his purpose was more to unteach it than to teach it. And if you look at the history of this concept, there's early Israelite religion does not have a concept of afterlife. They don't even have a concept of Satan. That develops much later on, after the Babylonian exile. They don't have a concept of judgment after death. All those concepts, eternal battle between good and evil, judgment after death, and life after death, all those concepts only comes to the fore in Jewish religion after their exile into Babylon, where they are mixed together with a crowd called Zoroastrianism, which is a faith that has got all of those elements in it, where there's an eternal battle between the wise Lord and the evil underlord, Lord of the underworld, where it's a very moralistic religion that you've got to choose on which side you are on the good or the bad. And And it suited them very well because, and they adopted it. We think of the Pharisees as maybe the Orthodox religion, but they're not. The Sadducees were Orthodox, and they didn't cling to any of those ideas. The Pharisees was considered the more liberal. They were the ones who adopted all these foreign ideas from other religions, and that is one of the ideas they adopted, and it became very popular by the days of Jesus. So early Israelite religion knows nothing about it. That doesn't mean that's right or wrong. It just means it developed. And what they accepted later on also doesn't mean it's right or wrong. There's a history to all of these ideas. The Bible is not a book of one theology. The Bible has got many theologies in conversation with one another. And the conversation moves forward, backwards, sideways, and they're continually conversing about who is God, what is evil, how does all of this work together, and it's a dynamic conversation. So, do I believe in hell? Yes, I believe there's a place of torment that people are experiencing even now, even here. Do I believe in, eternal conscious torment as it's been taught in that way? You know what? Any thinking theologian will tell you that our whole concept of time and space is very different in this spiritual realm. But what we've done again is we've taken our symbols and we've used stuff that is temporal and accessible to us now, and we've tried with our language to embellish it and make it as big as possible. I want to end off with this. When we fell in love, I didn't approach, when I fell in love, I didn't go to Marianne and say, Marianne, I'm deeply in love with you, and it is the will of God that you should love me, and that you should fall in love with me, and these are the 3 steps that you need to take to properly demonstrate your love to me. Now, if I did that, the romance would never have begun. And maybe I would have ended it off with saying, well, I'll give you a few days to consider this, but if you should make the wrong choice, I will torture you forever. Unfortunately, that is how the gospel has been presented to this world. No wonder they want nothing to do with that God. The way in which I won her love was to simply declare to her, without any guarantee of how she was going to respond, I just declared to her my absolute, complete, head over heels, crazy love. And I was prepared to be embarrassed, but I just had to tell her. And I was so glad when the response came. Now, obviously, we want people to respond to this gospel. But it is the most stupid strategy to tell people how to respond to love before you've demonstrated the love. How could I expect Marianne to fall in love unless I first told her I'm fully in love? I don't care how you respond, I'm still in love. That's the gospel. God comes to say, I've come to waste my life on you. I've come to put myself in your hands. You can do with me what you want. I am yours. And obviously, love anticipates a response for this romance to become everything it's supposed to be. I want to show you something. Jesus says in the most famous scripture, John 3:16, that he's come not to condemn this world, but to save it, so that everyone who believes should not perish, but have eternal life. Those who believe will not perish. Those who do not believe are condemned already. Now, what we made it in the typical gospel is God saying, I've come with an offer of love. Now, if you can show me that you accept my love, then I will really love you. But if I don't see you accepting my great love, I'm going to condemn you. You know, we're gonna. That is how the gospel's been presented. What that verse says is, God's come to embrace this world. Those who embrace Him back are in heaven already. Those who do not accept His acceptance are condemned already. It's not God condemning them. It's their very unbelief, their very refusal to acknowledge that they are accepted, that is their condemnation. Those who do not believe are condemned already, not because God's condemned them, but because they refuse to embrace the one who is consistent and persistent in His embrace of them. And that's hell. You know, the prodigal son, we call it the prodigal son, but you know, he went, spent his father's money, he's part of the inheritance, and eventually he finds himself in a place of suffering. And what changes his mind to go back to his father is not somebody that comes to him and says, "You rotten scoundrel. You smell like a pig. I mean, I don't even know if your father will take you back, but you are so rotten. You're so..." No, what changes his mind is he remembers his father and he comes to himself. See, the gospel is not supposed to be, we're going to tell people how stinking, rotten, lost they are. The gospel is us reminding them of, who's your father? I want you to come to yourself. I want you to see your face, the face of your birth. As James 1:25 says, every man who hears this word is like a man who sees the face of his birth as in a mirror. So we come to present to them not their potential, but their true selves. Their true selves that has always been preserved in Christ. And the self that they are living is a hell of a life, because it's a self that God does not acknowledge. God knows the true them. The gospel comes to confront them with their true selves. And so he goes back to the father and he still has his own little story. No, Father, you shouldn't even accept me back. I just want to be a servant. If you can just accept me as a servant, I will work in the house. And the father doesn't even listen to all his stories. He says, let me tell you my version of your life. Bring that coat. Bring that ring, the sign of authority. Bring those sandals which servants did not wear. Bring all of it. And by the way, there's a calf that's been slaughtered. The party's beginning. And the moment this son drops his own version of his life and accepts the father's version of his life, heaven begins. The party begins. There's another son who also misunderstands the Father, who sits outside. The Father goes to him and he says, why don't you join? And he says, you know what, I've worked all my life so hard. You never gave me a party. So you can see, he misunderstands the Father. He's also in his own lost hell. And the Father says to him, you've always been with me and everything I have is yours. And the Father goes back into the party. You see what makes this second son's hell such a torment is not the fact that it's some other time or some other place. What makes it such a torment is that he is so close that he can smell the food, hear the music, but he doesn't partake of any of it. Hell is being with the Father but not knowing him. Hell is having everything given to you but not enjoying it. So he remains in his hell because he clings to his own story of who the Father is and who he is and who his brother is. So there's a heaven and there's a hell that starts right here and right now. And whatever you believe it is, what we do is to introduce people to the message and the person of Jesus Christ. And there's nothing that can transport you to heaven better than that. So we've got many people, and I'll post this, and we'll get many people that's as mad as hell because we don't articulate and speak about hell exactly the way they do. Right. But hey, can I ask you for this one simple favor? We spend our lives introducing people to Jesus Christ. Why don't you stop fighting about minors that doesn't matter? And rather promote the essence of this message, which is Jesus. Yeah. He transforms lives and we see it weekly. We love it. Yes.
I have to say, it's amazing to me when you did that analogy just now with your wife, how even though it was just an analogy, there was something within us that was, oh my gosh, you know.
We've got friends from every walk of life, but we so enjoy even hearing from ministers who have spent decades in this mindset of you either in or out. And we have this continual agenda to get you to the in club, and that means we've got to convince you that we are right, you are wrong, and if you accept what we say, you're part of the in club, and live in that constant anxiety of that is what I'm supposed to do. And when they discover this simple truth, that the most significant thing about every person you're going to meet this week and for the rest of your life is not what they believe, it's how valuable they are. And when you acknowledge their value before you have concerns about their beliefs, and they know that you genuinely value them. I don't value a person because I've got the agenda of converting them in the traditional way. I value people. Why? Because they are valuable. And people can pick up on that, like you said. And when they know that you genuinely value them, they want to know why. What do you see? It's irresistible. I mean, they want to know, what do you see that causes you to be more excited about me than what I am about me? Whatever it is you believe, I want it. I want this. So what a beautiful way to live. That you can wholeheartedly, without any reservation, value and love every person you will ever meet. Because God has already demonstrated that that's the way He is. And once you've tasted it, once you've tasted the fact that He has valued you and loved you, not because you believed just right, but because He saw your value, it becomes an insult to treat other people any different than what He treated you. I can never go back to that gospel of exclusion, because it's an insult to the Jesus who embraced humanity when they were at their worst. Follow me, He says. In Ephesians 5 verse 1 He says, imitate your Father. What does your Father do? He loves. Awesome. Yeah.
So and I don't have any problem reaching, people who feel that they're at the go, then, then it's all wrong. So I don't know how to get past that.
Yeah. So let's just take that example. Normally in that example of a vengeful God who's got certain standards of whether you're in or out, what happened at Auschwitz, where thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people for a moment went into Hitler's flames, was consumed. In their theology, they pass right from Hitler's flames into God's eternal flames, where their torment is forever unconscious. So in their own theology, their God is worse than Hitler. What Hitler did was horrible, terrible, but it left scars forever. But those people suffered for maybe months, maybe years, and then it was over. How do you compare that from going from there to eternal conscious suffering? So there's a lot of inconsistencies in all these arguments, and we can argue it from every side, but I think the most useful avenue to go and research on how to answer it is to compare retributive justice, which is what that is based upon, with restorative justice. So they will say, God is just, and I will say, yes, He is, but not in a retributive way, because their whole basis is retribution, which means the punishment must fit the crime, or the reward must fit the good deeds. And so a tooth for a tooth, an eye for eye. And what that leaves us is blind and toothless. It doesn't heal or restore. Yeah. Restorative justice takes it to the next level. Restorative justice says, I'm not here to just... Because you see, what is the difference between an eye for eye and a tooth for a tooth? It's just the sequence of the event. Both are equally destructive. Both causes suffering. But because the one follows the other one, we think it's just. If the goal of punishment is not to restore, it is as evil as the initial deed that deserved the punishment. Punishment should always have the goal of restoring and healing. And so Jesus comes not to punish sin, but to forgive.
Judge righteous.
Yes.
Judge righteous.
Yes, and forgiveness goes against every law of retribution, because it gives you the exact opposite of what your actions has deserved. And so in one of Jesus' parables, he says a farmer went out early and he got all the people to work in his field. He went later, got some more. He went at midday, got some more. And the hour before the day was over, he got the last few workers. And he said, come work in my field. And so when they start receiving their wages, he starts paying the guys that only worked the hour. And he gives them a day's worth of wages. And the guy at the back of the field says, oh, this is party time. If they get a day's worth of wages, I mean, we're going to get a week's worth of wages. Because retributive justice means the reward must fit the effort. And so he continues to tell the story, and the owner gives everybody a day's wages, and the last guys aren't happy with this. And he says, why would my generosity upset you? He starts to show us a different kind of justice. These people who have only worked an hour also needs a day's wages to feed their family. It's not a perfect retributive justice, but it is a restorative and healing justice, which God's justice gives us what we need to be healed. It doesn't give us just what we deserved. And so that is why Colossians 2 says the very thing that he came to nail on that cross was the law of retribution.
Right.
Yeah.